Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave,
on behalf of every father and every mother,
wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors,
and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome.
Hey, Jonathan. Good evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to Tochnyi on the 759th day of this full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainian defenders fight day and night in the land, on the sea, and in the air. Ukrainians from across society work to rescue, save, and build a future for ours, their next generation, and as our friend Vasyl and contributor Vasyl depicted in this week in this image from his son's chess tournament. They do so despite having slept just a few hours in their basements or in bunkers under buildings. Tochnyi is, of course, a podcast on Apple, Spotify, and other platforms. We run a podcast series called Tochnyi Talks, which has featured the Wild Hornets, Michael Weiss, Dr. Mara Gilly, amongst many others. Please check Erlend and Daniela's latest interview with Dima, a drone builder from the Wild Hornets, in which you will hear a remarkable voice from this war. Tochnyi's latest research on FPV drones was, of course, published in The Economist. Daniela has just released the next round of his latest analysis at about 2 a.m. this morning. This analysis, of course, coming from the ever fastidious Andrew, Perpetua, and Gick. Please check out our Twitter timeline and, of course, like and subscribe to both that and our YouTube to see our latest content and details of our current and upcoming work and research. We have a pretty incredible looking lineup today. So first up, we have Joseph with an analysis of the news. Feel free to comment and ask your questions at any time, of course. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Jonathan. So sorry I missed my cue there, Jonathan. So I'll be starting with the news. Then we'll be moving to next. We'll have a report from our contributor Lorem Ipsum about the economic impact of strikes on Russian oil. That'll be followed by an update from our contributor Jay on some railway construction going on in Russia or in Ukrainian occupied territory. And then our contributor Bionade will have a report on the Ukraine facility plan being implemented by Ukraine right now. And that'll be concluded with a report from Jonathan, another segment from The Greatest Generation. So have an excellent lineup for you. Please do like and subscribe to Tochnyi. And thank you, Jonathan, for the excellent introduction. So without any further delay, I will get right to the news. Bloomberg reports that Western sanctions are now significantly impacting Russia's oil exports, marking the first notable disruption since the invasion of Ukraine over 2 years ago. Recent events indicate growing obstacles for Moscow in maintaining its vital energy sales amidst layers of US, European, and allied restrictions. A significant setback occurred as Indian refiners, Russia's second largest oil customer after China, decided to halt acceptance of crude cargoes on tankers owned by state-run Sovcomflot. This shipping giant handled about 1/5 of Russia's oil sales to India last year, but its fleet of over 100 vessels is now effectively shut out from this major market due to refiners refusing to take on sanctions risks. Moreover, numerous other Russian tankers targeted by U.S. sanctions have been unable to load new cargoes since being blacklisted. At least 7 Sovcomflot ships have seemingly disappeared from tracking systems on the Black Sea, indicating a disruption caused by Western penalties. In addition, Russian diesel cargoes are accumulating at sea without buyers, with over 6 million barrels floating idle as of mid-March, the highest volume since at least 2017. This surplus comes despite Ukraine's attempts to reduce supplies through drone attacks on Russian refineries. Greg Brew, an analyst at the Eurasia Group, noted a significant increase in U.S. sanctions pressure on Russian crude oil and diesel exports, coinciding with a decline in production. Although Russia can still rely on a shadow fleet of reflagged tankers to evade restrictions, the associated shipping costs have surged. The expense of delivering Russian crude to China, for example, now includes approximately $15 per barrel in freight fees, which over half of which is directly linked to the sanctions. These growing supply chain barriers present a shift for the Kremlin, which has managed to direct substantial volumes of oil to nations like India, sustaining a major revenue stream despite Western sanctions on the product. However, this situation is gradually changing as economic pressure tightens and the war persists. Janis Kluge, a sanctions expert at the German Institute for International Security Affairs, highlighted that while the impact remains contained, it will lead to increased costs, and Russia will have to discount oil prices further to sustain its exports. With the focus on the upcoming election cycle, there's speculation about how far the U.S. and its allies will escalate oil sanctions, considering the potential for higher energy costs. Since launching the invasion, Russia has maintained its oil revenues, and it's credited to being able to redirect the exports. Recent strikes have been leading to a reduction in the country's refining capacity. For example, on the night of March 23rd, the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara was targeted by a drone attack. This attack caused a fire at the refinery, and the regional government confirmed the incident and attributed it to a drone attack. There were no reported casualties from the report. The fire was extinguished by the morning. There was also an attack on the Novokuybishevsk refinery, which is also in the Samara region, although no fire was reported from this strike, which also occurred on the 23rd. The Kuibyshev oil refinery is one of the largest oil industry enterprises in the Samara region. The plant has been part of Rosneft since 2007, and it currently has a capacity of about 7 million tons of oil per year processing. According to the UK's Defense Ministry's report, the drone attacks have so far disrupted around 10% of Russia's total refinery capacity. Over recent weeks, Ukrainian forces have carried out a series of drone strikes targeting Russia's oil industry, and the extent of the damage suggests significant repairs could take considerable time and cost. So I will go ahead and move on to the next topic. So we'll be getting a lot more detail on that from our next segment. Vladimir Kudrynsky, CEO of Ukrenergo, the primary energy distributor in Ukraine, stated that the Russian missile attack on March 22nd targeted various regions and included thermal and hydroelectric power plants, as well as key substations operated by the company. Ukraine's energy ministry reported that power engineers have successfully restored the electricity supply in Odessa and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts following extensive attacks on the energy grid on the 22nd. In Dnipropetrovsk, the electricity supply has been fully reinstated, including the complete reconnection of Kryvyi Rih. In Khmelnytsky Oblast, electricity has been restored to all customers, but there's a possibility of additional restrictions if consumption rises. The Energy Ministry cautions further restrictions may happen in Odessa as well. In Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest urban center, around 35% of residential buildings have had their electricity supply reinstated after a major attack, with roughly half now having access to heating. Mayor Ihor Terekhov disclosed that the statistics he disclosed those statistics on a televised fundraiser. And this follows 15 Russian attacks on Kharkiv's energy infrastructure on March 22nd, leaving the city almost entirely without power, as per the head of the military administration. Consequently, 275,000 customers are still currently without electricity. They've restored about 2/3 of the customers, so about 500,000 or so. And then 275,000 still don't have electricity as of at least last night, I believe. The president has emphasized the critical situation, noting that the energy crisis is particularly severe and that efforts to restore power to households are proceeding with the highest possible speed. State Emergency Service reports that about 17,000 individuals sought assistance at 149 resilient centers in Kharkiv on March 23rd. The resilient centers are places where people can get electricity and heating. On March 20th, Russia launched a wave of terror attacks using drone and missile strikes, and at least 5 people were killed. And this was the beginning of the attack on the power grid that proceeded into the 22nd. The Dnipropetrovsk hydroelectric station, Ukraine's largest hydroelectric power plant, was one of the primary targets of the attacks. 8 Russian missiles hit the station, causing significant damage to the facility. The Dnipro hydroelectric station, also known as the Dnipro Dam, is located in the city of Zaporizhia. It is the largest hydroelectric power station on the Dnieper River, and it's the 5th step in the Dnieper cascade of hydroelectric stations that provides electric power for the Donetsk and Kryvyi region. The damage to the Dnipro hydroelectric power plant has resulted in the loss of 20% of the capacity of Ukra Hydroenergo, so the Ukrainian hydroelectrical power generation, Ukraine's largest hydropower generating company. Despite the significant damage, the environmental ministry stated that the situation is under control and that there's no danger of a breach of the dam following the attack. It's part of a pattern of Russian aggression against Ukrainian infrastructure. The Ukrainian Army Command noted that Russia launched 69 missiles from land, sea, and air, and that this is one of the most massive missile attacks on the 20th since the full-scale invasion. These attacks have disrupted power and essential services and caused significant civilian casualties. The international community has condemned the attacks, and efforts are underway to provide aid and support to affected regions. Next item. Russia has appointed Admiral Alexander Moiseev as the acting commander-in-chief of its navy, replacing Admiral Nikolai Yevmenov. This change in leadership comes as a series of attacks have provided setbacks for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Admiral Alexander Moiseev is an experienced officer of the Russian Navy. He initially trained in film repair before undergoing military service and studying at the Naval Technical Institute. He spent 29 years serving on Russian nuclear submarines and has held high-ranking positions in the past, including command of both the Black Sea Fleet and the Northern Fleet. It's considered quite a shakeup of the Russian Navy for his appointment. Admiral Nikolai Yemenov, who the new admiral is replacing, served as the commander-in-chief from 2019 to 2024. He also had a career serving on Russian nuclear submarines in the Pacific Fleet and held various command positions. However, his tenure has seen a series of setbacks for the Russian Navy, where Ukrainian forces have claimed to destroy more than 24 ships since the start of the full-scale invasion. The Ukrainian attacks have been a significant blow, as they have resulted in not only the loss of naval vessels, but have also forced Russia to relocate the Black Sea Fleet base from Crimea to Novorossiysk. The change in leadership is seen as a response to the problems caused by the Ukrainian setbacks. Next item. After discussions between German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius and his French counterpart Sébastien Lecornu in Berlin, it was revealed that KNDS, comprising France's Nexter and Germany's Krauss Maffei Wegmann, intends to establish a subsidiary in Ukraine. The subsidiary will manufacture artillery ammunition and replace components for weapons supplied to them. Pistorius emphasized the joint commitment of France and Germany to enhance Ukraine's self-sufficiency in ammunition production, and the French minister highlighted the strategic advantage of situating production closer to the theater of combat operations. BFM-TV elaborated on the necessity for spare parts, particularly the Caesar self-propelled artillery systems and the AMX-10 armored vehicles, which Ukraine has received many of during the ongoing war. The report mentioned that Ukraine has acquired 30 Caesars and 38 AMXs with plans from Paris to produce an additional 78 Caesars total for Ukraine. The need to replace components of artillery is pressing. This has been expressed by the Ukrainians, especially for the Caesar, which requires maintenance after approximately 2,000 rounds. Given the intense usage of these systems, periodic replacement of components like the barrel is essential for continued operation. According to a French official speaking anonymously, there's a prospect for this plan to include Ukrainian production facilities transitioning from manufacturing spare parts into eventually producing complete weapon systems. German officials stated at the press conference that the agreement is still in the very preliminary stages and that more specifics will be stated about the plan as it develops. Next item. Gunmen launched a deadly assault on a concert hall in a Moscow suburb on Friday, resulting in a reported death toll of at least 133, as confirmed by Russian officials. According to the Moscow Times, here's what is known about the incident at Crocus City Hall in Krasnogorsk, where a concert by a rock band called Picnic was scheduled. The attackers were clad in what is described as tactical uniforms and initiated the assault around 8:15 p.m., just prior to the commencement of the concert featuring the Soviet-era band. Investigators indicated the assailants used automatic firearms and ignited fire within the venue using a flammable substance. Reports from emergency services suggest that between 2 and 5 armed individuals entered the concert hall and opened fire. Footage circulating on social media, reportedly linked to security services, depicts 2 individuals entering the hall, and other clips show scenes of chaos with people fleeing and bodies in the venue. The numerous individuals sought refuge within the hall or hurried towards the exit, leading to the basement or rooftop in an effort to evade the gunmen. Hours after the attack, an AFP reporter on site observed black smoke and flames emanating from the roof of the concert hall, capable of accommodating around 6,000. Reports indicated that a portion of the roof had collapsed from the fire. The confirmed death toll stands at a minimum of 133 individuals, with expectations of further casualties as rescue efforts persist in looking over the debris in the coming days. During the clearance operations at the City Hall, the number of casualties resulting, this is just a quote confirming 133 casualties. As per the Ministry of Emergency Situations, 100 individuals are currently hospitalized as of Saturday. Fire services played a critical role in aiding approximately 100 individuals escaping through the basement. According to the Russian news agency TASS, all members of the band were evacuated, and rescue efforts were initiated to assist individuals who are still trapped on the roof. I assume that's resolved by now. The Islamic State asserted responsibility for the attack on Friday, stating that its members targeted a large gathering on the outskirts of Moscow and subsequently withdrew to their bases unharmed. The Kremlin confirmed the arrest of 11 individuals, including 4 assailants. Russia's FSB security service disclosed that some of the attackers had fled in the direction, or I should say they claimed, the Russia-Ukraine border, further noting that they maintained appropriate contacts within the country. In contrast, Ukraine leveled accusations against the Kremlin and its agencies, alleging that there was an orchestration of the attack. This is the Ukrainian intelligence services basically claimed this potentially as a false flag. 2 weeks prior to the assault, the U.S. Embassy issued a warning stating there was a risk of extremists targeting large gatherings in Moscow, including concerts. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman criticized the United States, saying that if the U.S. had reliable information, it should have immediately transmitted it. I should mention, since then, it's come out that the U.S. actually sent a picture of one of the alleged terrorists in the building, doing reconnaissance, basically. So it's a rather specific warning that the U.S. provided. So next, I wanted to provide, 6 total Tajik nationals have actually been accused of committing some of these acts in Russia. And Tajikistan, the government has issued kind of some official statements on the matter. And so I think I've seen a lot of coverage of the sort of Russian sources and the reporting from that. But I wanted to provide a little bit of context from the Tajik side in terms of their response to what was said. So I'm going to be just basically providing a translation of a report by Radio Free Tajikistan. I think it's an excellent news source for information about Tajikistan if anyone's interested in checking them out. I know some journalists that work there. They're cool people. So due to the emergence of video footage broadcasted by several Russian channels on Telegram on March 23rd, there is the suspicion that the terrorist attack on Crocus City Hall involved 4 foreign nationals, possibly citizens of Tajikistan and Tajik residents of Russia. Russian authorities have reported the detention of 11 individuals involved in the attack, including 4 direct participants, but have not disclosed their identities. However, they have not confirmed or denied officially any reports about Tajik citizens' involvement, and only stated that all participants were foreigners and have been apprehended. So I want to stress, this article from Tajikistan stresses that most of what they're saying comes from Telegram channels. that are known to be state affiliated but aren't official channels. In other words, Russia hasn't made any official statements about this stuff, or only a few, and they'll specify when. But when they say electronic sources or something like that, that's basically what they mean. It's maybe a little bit dismissive to say they're just Telegram channels because they are affiliated with Russian sources, but it's a little far to say that they're official sources. Anyways, according to an initial list containing the names of 6 individuals, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Tajikistan identified 3 Tajik citizens involved in the attack. Among the identified individuals, one person's photo was published, which Russian networks claim to be one of the attackers detained in the Bryansk region. Following the injury during the attack, he was initially admitted to a hospital in Bryansk, specializing in respiratory and pulmonary disorders and intensive care. But on the evening of March 23rd, security officials took him into custody, and it's likely that he's currently in the Moscow detention center. Mohammed Sabir Faizov, who's age 19 from Dushanbe, has been identified as one of the attackers who was working in a factory in the city of Ivanovo, Russia, since November 2023. On March 23rd, on the basis of video footage broadcast by several Russian channels on Telegram, at least 4 foreigners were arrested on suspicion and are possibly citizens of Tajikistan. Russian authorities, sorry, that's already a repetition. From the first list, which contained the list of 6 people, the Ministry of Internal Affairs denied the participation of 3 of those citizens. Of the remaining 3 names, a photo is published of one person. I already mentioned that. Man, this is like repetitive, sorry. 19-year-old, this is another suspect, 19-year-old Muhammad Sabir Faizov, a native of Dushanbe, has been known to have been working in a barbershop in the city since 2023. According to information on his social network page on VKontact, he does subscribe to religious channels and publish manuscripts in Arabic, which reflect some religious feelings. He announced that he's in love with Allah, and he mentions the Quran. He's also a member of the pages I'm in love with Islam, Islam is my life, Tajiks of the world, and pages about obtaining Russian citizenship. He opened a new page and published photos, one of which was taken in 2016 on the banks of the Krasnoholmskaya neighborhood in Moscow in front of the House of Music. He has photos from the city of Ivanovo, where he worked, and one of his new pages, the name of a certain group of people is repeated in the video. Lying on a hospital bed with a swollen head, he asks, "What did I do?" And the interpreter tells him that he doesn't know because he's been brought to translate. So in other words, that's like the video of his arrest, right? He's in the hospital saying, "What did I do?" Another on the list, 22-year-old Salfolzoda Shohinjan Adu Gaforovich. Only this is known about him. He was born in the Faizabadi district of Tajikistan, and no news or video about him has been published beyond unofficially the name. According to other videos published by Russian Telegram channels, another person answers the questions of the interrogator through a translator, and he tells the story of buying a car with the help of a fellow countryman named Abdullah. The video is not complete, and it's alone, and he guessed about the car. The suspects of the attack allegedly wanted to escape to use this car. And I should mention, like, if you watch the video, he looks like he's under duress when he's talking. I don't know how else to put it. Another person who calls him Fariduni Shamsuddin is also a citizen of Tajikistan and answers questions in the front of the forest surrounded by armed people who are probably Russian law enforcement. And he has tied hands and a trembling body. He admits to his participation in the attack. For this, allegedly, the organization promised him about 1 million rubles. And so far, they've transferred, according to him, 500,000 to his bank account. Another person who was shown with a bloody head and face and an ear removed and a damaged chin called himself Raja Balizoda. And in other videos, they are shown torturing him. In all these cases, there's no evidence that the detainees were directly involved in the attack on the concert hall. I should mention there was, there was an OSINT source that compared the clothing of the attackers to the clothing of the suspects apprehended. It looks like that we might have a match for maybe one of them, maybe a few more, but I should just mention, like, there's certainly nothing definitively demonstrating that all the people apprehended were involved. I'll put it that way. It's also impossible to verify that these people are directly related so far. Aside for some writings from on VKontakte by one of the suspects, there's no real evidence to emerge that any of them are connected to the Islamic State, according to the Tajiks who investigated. And Russian electronic publications accuse other citizens of being involved in the attack, but they mention that the accusations have no truth. So I should mention that the press statement, the Ministry of Internal Affairs issued an official press statement, and they mentioned that there are at least 3 people in the charges that were in that are totally groundless. And the reason for that is that 2 of the residents were in Tajikistan at the time. These are Ismanov and Nasruddinov, and that they published photos of them. It's a bit strange to me. The photos are actually of them indoors, like behind some wallpaper. I will say it looks like very Tajik wallpaper to me. Like I've seen that wallpaper before, but it's odd to me they wouldn't just take a photo of them like in Dushanbe. That seems like a much simpler thing. But so the internal Ministry of Internal Affairs of Tajikistan released photographic evidence that these people were in Dushanbe in another country when this incident occurred. And then the third person mentioned who was accused by the Russian Federation was in Samara at the time of the incident in Russia, but in a different region of Samara. And he like immediately turned himself into the police in Russia and basically said, "I had nothing to do with this. I'm here to clear my name." So at least 3 of the people that were named in these accusations of arrests, the government of Tajikistan has effectively said like it's basically impossible that these people were involved directly in this, at least. So yeah, that's pretty much what the Tajiks had to say about it, and that concludes my news report for this week. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our contributor, Lorem Ipsum. He's a new contributor of ours. We're very glad to have him on Tochnyi. And he has been working in the economics of the energy industry for over 20 years. So he's going to talk to us about the current state of the Russian oil industry in light of the Ukrainian attacks. So over to you, Lorem Ipsum.
Thanks. Just double checking you can hear me, right? I want to make sure my audio is good.
All
right. So since it's all good, there's an image that, yep, it's already up. I see that. So just taking a step back, if you look at what the Russian economy was for the data reported from 2022 in terms of exports and in terms of export destinations, you can see how heavily concentrated it is, not just around energy or not just on crude, but also around energy more broadly. So, crude, 28%, petroleum gas, obviously there, 15%, refined petroleum, 14%. You see there in the image coal briquettes, but that's just a small portion of the entire coal extraction industry. But even that is 7.5%. So you're looking at roughly 60% that is objectively tangible for energy industry extraction. And if you were to go through that graph and drill down around what was, the other extractive industries, right? So gold, wheat, et cetera, you're going to see the overwhelming majority there is an extractive industry that is sold into the global market. And obviously take this with a grain of salt. It's the 2022 data. These are leading indicators, right? So this is showing what was delivered in 2022, not what was ordered in 2022. The future forward projection of this data would obviously be much more skeptical. If you skip forward to the next slide, so here's a slide on just natural gas exports, right? And natural gas, keep in mind, is the core of the Russian economic model, right? The Yamal gas fields that were feeding the European natural gas market. Germany, France, Poland, Slovakia, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look at this chart, it's very illustrative. LNG is a tiny percentage. LNG just, I apologize if I'm over explaining here. LNG, liquefied natural gas. This is a very complex transfer system. You need to take gas from specific pipelines. You need to put it on specific ships through specific liquefaction terminals. Those ships then need to go to specific ports on the destination end. that have specific gasification terminals and then can actually take that gas to market. So it's not something that can easily be built out. But even in the run up to 2021, as you see that dark blue part of the chart expand, that is a very small percentage of their overall market. Most of that light blue, the overwhelming majority of that light blue, is what was sent by Gazprom from Yamal to Western Europe in one way or another, whether it was through the overland pipelines, through Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine, or whether it was through the undersea pipelines from Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Obviously, those two pipelines that I just mentioned were shut down. Well, Nord Stream 1 was shut down by Russia several months prior to its explosion, and Nord Stream 2 was never operational. But to be clear, the main delta in terms of Russia's natural gas energy export capacity was around LNG. So if we can just go to the next slide. All right, so these are the, this is a very generalized chart, graph. So you see the sites that have been hit by Ukrainian drone strikes. Those are not necessarily offline, to be clear. But if you look around St. Petersburg and you look around the Kerch Peninsula, those clusters are the main export capacity for Russian LNG. And hitting those, and we don't know what the exact consequences were, but hitting those is a critical blow to Russia's ability to export LNG and crude oil. Crude oil is much more fungible. Then take the middle of that graphic, right? From Belgorod, Kursk, all the way around to, I guess that would be Saratov, and all the way up to Nizhny Novgorod, and then back around down towards Moscow. All of those red sites. That's all the refining capacity. That's the ability of Russia to, produce gasoline, jet fuel, and all of the variations of jet fuel. So there's two separate questions. The ability of Russia to make money by exporting LNG and crude oil and refined products, and that's represented around Petersburg and around Rostov and around Kerch. And then there's the ability for Russia to provide refined products for the people who need it, whether those be civilians, whether that's military. And that's the middle. From Belgorod, Kursk, east to Saratov, up to Nizhny Novgorod, and around towards Moscow. And we don't know exactly what damage was done to each facility. These facilities are well designed, to be clear. They are not single point of failure facilities. So just because a facility was hit does not mean that it was taken offline or that its capacity is necessarily discounted from the overall equation that you're putting towards whether it's export or whether it's domestic production. The next slide. Just breaking down the refining graph for Russia, as you can see, the majority of what Russia produces and brings to market is crude, unrefined crude oil. And then the second biggest component of that is either gas oil or diesel. So the more exotic refined products have always been marginal for them, but those are the ones they might need in terms of a domestic supply emergency. And so what I was saying to a bunch of people on the stream when we did a stream on Friday was there's two questions. One, how does this affect the Russian economy long term? Well, you can see that in the purple graph right there, and a bit on the very dark red graph. Two, what does this mean for the Russian ability to keep its mobilized forces in the field and to also keep its civilians able to travel from A to B? And that would be the three middle shades of red to a lighter degree. When you factor in aircraft, it gets a bit more complicated, but that's the rough summation. Next point. So if you can see on this graph, Yamal is the major nexus of Gazprom's Western Siberian gas fields. And if you see those two red lines, where do they point? They lead into Germany. They lead into, well, they both lead into Germany. And then you have a potential line that goes into Vienna, but there's no connection from those gas fields to either an LNG point, aside from Petersburg, which, as we discussed previously, was threatened if not taken offline. And there's no through point to China. If you look on the right side of that image, the Eastern Siberian pipelines, that's Power Siberia 1. The goal that Russia has is to connect Yamal, which is in the top center of that image, to the Eastern Siberian network, which is in the right side of that image. That's Power Siberia 2. And China has made it very clear they have no intention of improving this pipeline. That pipeline will take 10 years to make, and at least $500 billion mark in USD, maybe more, maybe closer to $1 trillion. So Russia's ability to sell the gas, and Russia's, but also Gazprom's ability to sell the gas that they were selling routinely and at a very good profit to Western Europe up till 2022 from Yamal is entirely compromised for the next decade. And that is not something that they can solve within the next decade unless they have, even if they have massive capital expenditure. And the capital expenditure is not going to be easy to come by. All right, last image. So this is Yamal. As you can see, these are the different facilities. The one thing that I was asked a lot in the last 2 weeks was, if you could hit anywhere in Russia, where would you hit? And I said, Yamal, hit me there. There's a lot of facilities there. These are very, very, very large refineries, extraction points, through points, terminals, storage points. If you hit this, though, this would, if you could square delete what's on the map right here, that would bankrupt Gazprom. And this is obviously beyond the supposedly established range of what Ukraine can hit. But if they could hit this, this would absolutely cripple the ability of Russia to provide natural gas exports, which is already very, very limited. But if they could do this, this would absolutely cripple that capacity. That's their main funding, and that's also the main source for their industry. So if you could pick one target, this would be it. Happy to take questions on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lorem. I don't know if there are any questions from the people in the panel, or did we get any in chat? Yeah, we did. So I'll just start with this one from Thierry. From what you said, most of the gas is now sold to China. Is the Amur gas terminal the right place to be targeted to stop that gas delivery?
Sorry, to be clear, there's very little gas sold to China. The oil is sold to China. You know, and this is something maybe I should have highlighted before. Oil is very easy to put on a ship, right? All you need is an oil tanker. To put natural gas on a ship and ship it, you need the right pipelines. You need a liquefaction terminal on the supplier end, and then you need a gasification terminal on the buyer end. And in between, you also need a very specific type of ship, which is very hard. So Russia's ability to sell its oil is very hard to impinge, and we were not really trying to impinge it. Russia can put oil, as it does, on its dark fleets in the Baltic and in the Aegean, right, where the oil is transferred ship to ship without registration and is untrackable, or they just sell it directly to India, who arbitrages the price difference from the price cap. Oil is very easy for Russia. Natural gas is the real issue, and you cannot simply transfer that unless you have, and they've already maxed out their LNG capacity, which means, selling natural gas via ship, seaborne natural gas. And in order for them to actually monetize their natural gas assets, the assets they were selling into Europe, very profitably for the last 20 years, for them to monetize those assets for another market is going to take 10 years and a massive amount of capital expenditure. And they can't afford that, either in time or money.
Yeah, thanks. We also got another question on, I think Dilidoli means LNG, not LPG, but why is, I guess, LNG a good target? Is it just that it's uniquely vulnerable?
It's not that it's uniquely vulnerable, although it is quite vulnerable. I don't presume to speak about what air defense assets are around those terminals, but it is a very explicit single point of failure in the Russian energy infrastructure. So if you could hit it, that would be the place to hit it. There's no ability for Russia to replace that capacity were it taken out in the short to medium term. So if you had Terminal X, right, liquefaction Terminal X, let's call it, right outside St. Petersburg, and that were taken out by a strike, how long would it take you to replace that capacity? In the best of circumstances, 3 to 5 years. These are not simple systems. This is not taking crude oil and pumping it onto a tanker. These are very complex systems. And it requires a lot of technology that presumably they would have either a hard time getting from the West or a very steep price to pay when buying from China. So that would be the most prominent single point of failure.
Yeah, so I also got a question from Jonathan. Please go ahead, Jonathan.
Thanks, Erlend. Lauren, I was just wondering, this video that we can see here, could you tell us what you think in terms, how much damage do you think has been caused here, and what would you say is the estimated repair time from this strike?
It's a very good question, and this is not my video. I've seen this video before. I can see it right now, and it does allude to a point that I was making earlier on a different podcast, which is, these refineries that are being hit, whether it's a refinery, a fuel depot, whether it's a pipeline network that's been hit over the last 3 to 4 weeks, these are well-designed facilities that do not necessarily have a lot of single points of failure. And this video is a good example of that, where it's probably not going to be as significant as one would think if one were coming to it de novo. It depends exactly where it hit. I can't speak exactly as to where it hit in that facility. But given that these facilities are generally the size of, and as this facility is in particular, the size of, 5 to 10 Manhattan city blocks, it really depends about exactly where the damage is done. But there's a lot of redundancy, as there are, not just in Russian plants or refineries, but also, worldwide. This is not a uniquely Russian thing, although I've heard that proposed that Russians are uniquely redundant in their oil refining capacity. But anyway, this facility almost certainly has significant redundant ability to maintain some operations for some parts of its capability. So I think it's best to underestimate. That's the safest bet. Maybe it's a certain portion of its refining capacity that's offline for 3 to 6 weeks. Maybe it is one very specific portion of that that's offline for 6 to 8 months. And maybe it's a portion of its inputs, if it hit a pipeline, that's offline, whether it's 3 to 6 weeks or 3 to 6 months. But there's going to be a lot of parts of that facility that are very much operational. Probably, starting within 24 hours.
Is it fair to say that when these facilities were designed and constructed, they weren't done so with being struck by Ukrainian deep strike UAVs in mind? So
No,
they're vulnerable in that respect.
They were definitely not designed with Ukrainian UAVs in mind, but they were designed because, with the fact that at the end of the day, a refinery is essentially super boiling a rigid steel container to separate different parts of hydrocarbons into different tubes, which means your shelf life of your components is very, very, very short. So there's a lot of redundancy built into the system. Um, some some facilities will be designed with strategic threats in mind. So there was a facility in East Germany that was essentially the basis of the East German economy between the 1950s and the 1970s. It was completely fed by inputs from the Soviet Union, and that facility was one of the most heavily fortified facilities in the entire DDR, because they knew that if that facility went offline, they were unable to provide even basic functions for not only their military, but also their civilian population. So that's one extreme. And that I'm not saying that everything's like that, but there are, design elements in these facilities, especially those from the former Eastern Bloc, that definitely incorporate redundancy. I'll put it that way.
I think Bionade had a question.
Yeah, actually, we heard this media reports this week that allegedly the U.S. administration told Ukraine to stop hitting Russian refineries because the oil price could be influenced by this. Are there any indicators that this could happen, or is this already happening? What is your opinion on this?
Thank you for bringing this up. This is a really good point. A lot of people who are on this stream, I've already talked to about this. As you can tell by my accent, I have an American passport. I've never been more ashamed to be an American than when I saw that report. It was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And there's a certain person in the administration, I'm sure we all know who I'm talking about, who was responsible for that leak. It was absolutely reprehensible for the US government through Jake Sullivan to say that to Ukraine. It's petty. It is economically illiterate for them to say that, and it is borderline craven for them to say that. The election, re-election, or failure to re-elect Joe Biden has nothing to do with Ukraine hitting Russian refineries. Ukraine hitting Russian refineries, pipelines, terminals has a massive impact on Ukraine's ability to defend its sovereignty, to defend its territory, and to negate the Russian ability to wage its criminal war. It has almost no, not just almost no impact, essentially zero impact on the price of gas in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And if the Biden administration is actually concerned about the price of gas in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I have carried a lot of water for the Biden administration for the last 3 years, if they really are concerned about that, then when they drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserve over the last 3 years and had an opportunity to buy back about 2/3 of that when the price of crude was at 60, WTI was at 60, then they should have done it. And if the Biden administration is really going to say with a straight face to the Ukrainian government, you can't hit these Russian facilities because it will impact the price of gasoline in the US in an election season, then the Biden administration has no right to be in government. And I say this as someone who's carried a ton of their water, because this is a very solvable problem. If you're the United States, you can easily solve that marginal difference, right? So say all of the facilities hit by Ukraine went offline tomorrow. You're the United States government. How do you solve that in terms of oil demand and supply, in terms of the price of gasoline in Omaha, Nebraska? How do you solve that? It's very easy. Deploy the SPR, make a phone call to Saudi Arabia. It's not hard. deregulate drilling, which is not going to be a short-term solution, obviously, but prices reflect future expectations, so short-term prices will be impacted by that. You have lots of tools in your chest, and if you're saying to Ukraine that you can't hit these targets that will materially impact your occupier's ability to occupy your country because we're worried about our domestic gas price, that's bullshit. I'm sorry. Anyone who's making that argument either is completely disingenuous or economically illiterate.
Yeah, I think we need to make clear here's the point. We don't have any confirmation that this really happened, right?
That's
it's
also true.
Just,
yeah.
Yeah, it's just rumors and this reporting about it. But from the factual point, the attacks from Ukraine wouldn't really have an impact on the market prices, right?
Correct. If every facility that Ukraine hit was taken completely offline, which is nowhere close to being the reality, these will be partial issues. Let's say every facility Ukraine hit was taken completely offline. The total impact on the global price of oil, crude oil, refined products could be negated with the stroke of a pen that would not to release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve of the United States. And it would be a marginal release and it would cost no one anything. It could be solved immediately.
All right, great. Thanks for your answer.
I saw Andrew has joined, so I guess maybe you want to ask something.
Hi. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I'm sorry, but I was wondering if you did you already talk about the strike that was like yesterday?
Just briefly on my news reporting.
Yeah, I was just curious if Lorem wants to talk about that.
The strike that Gick talked about in our other chat.
Yeah.
Is that your...
Yeah.
It's a very small facility. Tactically, it may have a huge impact, right? Because the ability to get, whether it's fuel oil, diesel, jet fuel, I don't pretend to know exactly what was stored at that facility, but there's absolutely the potential for, again, it's Sevastopol, right? So there's naval, land, and air components that need to be supplied from there. So hitting that tactically has a huge impact. Hitting that strategically or geostrategically in terms of the market is not a big impact. It's a very small facility. Tactically, it could be huge, but strategically, it's not moving the needle compared to what Ukraine has done in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I also saw a question. I think you mentioned it. Basically, the fact that Bionade said that this is a rumor, etc. But we had a question about the fact that it has been refuted by the White House, etc. We also have a question: wouldn't the loss of refining capacity increase the availability of crude on the market?
I mean, I just want to make sure I'm hearing that question correctly. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, wouldn't the loss of refining capacity increase the availability of crude on the market? That's from,
sorry.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I misheard you originally. Yes, it would. Just axiomatically, right? If you're unable to refine it, then yes, you have to supply it, but not materially. And you have to remember that OPEC Plus, of which Russia is a part, has cut production quotas consistently over the last 18 months. The difference in what Russia would be supplying to the market in terms of crude that they couldn't refine because refineries were offline is a drop in the bucket compared to the global market. And moreover, it's already under a regime where they are purposely restricting crude production.
Understood. Also, Another question that is kind of connected to this: didn't Russia stop oil exports to ensure domestic supply plus sanctions stop India from buying Russian oil?
So, just for background, the story between India and Russia is very interesting because there's a lot of people on Twitter who really think that India was bailing Russia out in 2022 and 2023 in terms of oil sanctions. India was putting Russia over a barrel for those years, right? They were buying at $10 to $15 per barrel below market, and then selling that at cost onto the global market. India was laughing all the way to the bank because they were the only person who would buy the excess Russian oil. Eventually, China came online. That really narrowed the arbitrage down much closer to market price. The ability of Russia to export its crude oil, I mean, crude oil is a very fungible product, is not really impacted. The G7 did their price cap. It did have an impact in that it influenced others' behavior, but it did not enforce that price cap per se. And that a large factor in that is just the lack of global demand. China being in a massive deflationary spiral has tanked demand for natural resources, and that's what really has kind of bailed out the global oil market, bailed out global oil buyers. It's absolutely sabotaged global oil sellers. So Russia's ability to sell to India is dependent on India's willingness to arbitrage the market, and there's no longer an arbitrage. There was for 18 months, and India took full advantage.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm gonna ask a question, and then if no one else on the panel has any more questions about this topic, we might go to the next topic. So you kind of touched this, but I think we can maybe expand on it a little bit. Are these refineries legitimate targets for Ukraine? That's my question.
Yes, is the answer. Is the
Yeah.
is the Novopavlovka Dam a legitimate target? So if they're hitting that dam, then yes, they are. But these are facilities. Forget about dual use. These are facilities producing fuel oil for tanks and diesel for tanks, and these are facilities producing jet fuel for their air force, without which they could not kill as many Ukrainians as they're trying to kill. So yes, it's the definition of a legitimate target in any circumstance.
And the fact that this might impact civilians in some sort of way, it doesn't really change. It still is a legitimate target.
Nothing about if someone has to pay a higher price it would be a cent. It wouldn't even be a cent higher or 2 cents higher. It could easily be negated. But even then, you can't just ask Ukrainians to die quietly. I'm sorry. These are legitimate targets. Without these facilities, Russia cannot continue its occupation and aggression at the scale that it currently is doing. That's a definition of a legitimate target. You're not targeting civilians. You're not targeting, housing complexes. You're targeting critical infrastructure. While Russia is targeting Novopavlovka, it's targeting the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I'm sorry, this is a legitimate target.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Even from the Russian reports, we see, I would say, usually no casualties from these attacks. Sometimes maybe one. And casualty could be injury or death, right? And so, yeah, in terms of if we're talking ethics here or the legitimacy of a target, I think as you were saying, it's the most sort of ethical approach in terms of not killing people and stopping Russia from prosecuting the war, because this is the Russian military budget kind of runs on this, right? We did have one more question in the chat, though, Erlend, I wanted to get to, which was Zero Lad. It's a little bit down there. To what degree is Russia dependent on Western hardware? Do they have the ability to repair multiple damaged facilities? So what does Russian repair capacity look like in light of what's going on?
It's a very complex question, and I don't have the full competence to go through that right, in this audience. I could give you a general overview of that question. I'm not someone who can tell you exactly what piece is going to be needed to repair facility X of subsection Y of refinery Z. I wouldn't pretend to know that. But in terms of overall need for Western technology, it's not as much as you think it is. This is not semiconductors. This is a country that had a oil and gas export business model since essentially 1960. 1970 is more accurate, right? Before that, it was agricultural. So there's no shortage of Russian, former Soviet, mechanical industrial know-how when it comes to building and maintaining refineries, terminals, and pipelines, because that was how they made their money really from the late 60s until the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and obviously for the Russian Federation from its foundation until now. So there's a ton of know-how there. If they don't know how to do that, they don't know how to do anything, is the short answer.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on and contributing. Erlend, anything else you want to wrap this segment up with? Or?
Well, unless Lorem wants to add something, then you're free.
Yeah, I'm good. I think I've said my piece.
Yeah, welcome back anytime to update us on any kind of economic topics or energy topics. We're always interested in that stuff, man.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, up next, I believe, is Mr. J. You've been watching a railway. Is that correct?
Hello, good evening from Germany to our viewers. Yes, that's the topic we have here. The Russians are constructing a railway, or they're trying to fix a railway gap they have in their current logistics system. And I think before we talk about the details, like I was monitoring that railway construction for kind of long time, I would basically start with a general overview. Do you have the map panels maybe available for us before we go to the satellite images?
Do you want a map?
Yeah, we had two maps I prepared. But anyway, I will explain it just. The Russians have a disadvantages supply system, especially in the southern part of like the occupied parts of the Kherson and the Zaporizhia Oblast, where they have deployed a whole army group. And basically, to supply it, they have to put it on a train, drive it from Rostov or Taganrog or one of their like main supply nodes, whole around the Azov Sea, and then they have to cross the Kerch Bridge. After it, go to Crimea, and then they can unload the supplies from like the train and put it where it needs to be gone, to the front line. So this is not like, it is working somehow, I would say. Yeah, beautiful. You can see it on the map. Yeah, it is working, but it's very inefficient. And of course, it's also like the Kerch Bridge is certainly a bottleneck. Like when the bridge got struck, sorry. They had like severe issues to like basically supply their troops. And as a consequence of that, they are now trying to fix the gap on landlocked territory, basically between the border between Russia and the occupied Zaporizhia Oblast. To give some sight, like they also have another railway. That's really sad that we don't have the panels in here. They have another railway which basically connects Donetsk with Mariupol through Volnovakha. Yeah, there we have it. Okay.
Real quick, just to clarify, Jay, when you said we don't have it, my understanding was like we can't show some of the satellite imagery. Is that like accurate?
No, that's like the satellite images are fine, and just here we have an overview. Okay, Do you have the other one where I marked the new railway? Yeah, perfect. There you can see it. Yeah, this is exactly where they try to close the gap, or how the future like railway will connect. Basically, the larger towns or cities you can see there. You can see Donetsk in the north. You can see Taganrog on the east at the Azov Sea, and you can also see Mariupol. And this is basically the problem they had. You can also see like the other railway bit in the west, but as I said, it's too close to the front lines. The Ukrainians could basically strike it with artillery, and the Russians are not like they can't really use it efficiently. So basically, they have to rely on the Kerch Bridge until yet. That may like change soon when the current construction is like finished, and then we'll have this connection where they basically like skip this whole drive around the Azov Sea, and they will have a more efficient supply line as long as it is operable. And there we come to the interesting part. Like I was monitoring this effort to construct this railway line like since months. And when we go a bit more into the analysis now, then we can see that it's not yet finished. They should have finished it, but it's not yet finished. That's what I can say. Also, like for the last part of the general context, while the main goal is to have a relief, basically, for the dependency on the Kerch Bridge. The Kerch Bridge railway, like it's double tracked and it's electrified, so it's like it has a nice throughput as long as the bridge is working. This railway, which is like being built right now, it's a strategic build. It's a strategic railway. What does a strategic railway mean? It's like basically constructed for military purpose. Yeah, it's not for bringing civilians from A to B, but they have a dire need to close this gap to make their logistic system, which is largely reliant on railway, more efficient. Yeah, so far this is like the general situation, the disadvantage the Russians still have. Any questions so far for this right now?
Just one from Terry just mentioned that there's a railway ferry that connects the Chushka port to Crimea over the, I assumed Strait of Kerch. When the railway part of the bridge was damaged, they used that facility.
I had to use the ferry. Yeah, I mean, yeah. They also had to use these kind of ferries back in the days when they were still occupying Kherson of the Dnipro River, and of course you can use a ferry, but it is like the throughput what you can deliver as goods through a ferry system is so limited. Like it's the worst solution you could have, because you can't
no
really
logistician. No logistician wants to hear that they got to go through a ferry.
Definitely not. It's slow. That's the target thing we can skip. But when you you could have 10 trains a day run over a bridge, or one ferry, which is not able to get a whole train on it. So yeah, your capability to supply something are diminished when you use a ferry. It's not zero, but it's super, 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 super inefficient.
Any other questions, Erlend?
Well, not that I know.
I saw something. I saw. Yeah, Kerch to Jankoy is not electrified, right? But I think the Kerch bridge itself is electrified. That's what I said. electrified is not that important. You can go to the satellite imagery. The Russians are mainly using anyway the diesel locomotives. But yeah, then let's go to the second part, to the satellite images. First of all, some general information about this railway. I think I made the point clear why it is necessary for the Russians to construct this railway. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't start to actually construct anything like earlier. Yeah, when the first signs when they started to gear up the construction were in late summer, early autumn 2023, when I remember correctly, which from my understanding is quite late. And yeah, there we can start. When in October 2023, we had the first like detailed satellite images about the constructions. You can see it here. Also, what I want to just side note about the slides. Basically, we go on the railway from the west to the east. This is the most one of the most western parts where they laid the foundations for the tracks. As you can see, this is old satellite imagery from, as I said, October 2023. And here you can see the intersection with a larger street in Novoselivka. It's quite close to the junction with the railway I mentioned, which connects Donetsk to Mariupol. And yeah, this is currently the most interesting part because I checked satellite images yesterday, and basically the most part of the track laying of this railway is finished. I assessed it like a couple of days ago with satellite images, and I saw that about like 80% of the track was already laid, which leads to the conclusion they are like quite soon to finish it. But here we see a main problem when you would have like, so we don't use them, less detailed images like from Sentinel Hub. You could see that this is actually the gap which is not finished, because I checked it yesterday and there is no tracks laid yet at this point. This intersection, they have some difficulties about constructing there, and it looks rather the same in the like when we had images in the last week. There was no big difference, and this is the bottleneck in track laying. I'm not sure why they haven't laid track there. There seems some kind of delays, obviously, there, and this is the part which is not yet finished. When we talk about not yet, I mean yesterday's images. Yeah. But maybe we can go to the next. We have more imagery from October. Yeah, this is a bit more in the east, but quite close to this, not far away, I would say 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers away from this intersection we have seen with the road. And here you can see basically a lot of lorries or trucks with bulk material, where they started basically the digging for the fundament of the railway. Then we can go to the next. This is close to the lorries, also like very close. This is basically the construction site, the base camp. You can see some trucks standing around. You can see also this is where the workers probably sleep. As you can see, some barracks or something in there, and also some communication tower. So this is basically the camp they set up for the workers, where they like quartered and they sleep, and then they go to the construction. Okay, next. This is probably the critical asset the railway will have in the future. It's the bridge. They have, I think it has 2 bridges, and this is the bridge over the Kalmius River, where you can also quite detailedly see that they were like digging there and trying to build the bridge. What I can say from today is, with recent satellite imagery, we could see this part seems to be finished. Like I'm not saying it's operable, but I could clearly see on satellite images that the track was laid. Yeah, they have finished with the track laying, and the bridge can be used. And as a side note, this is probably from a military side or point of view where you would like to actually target the railway, because this is critical infrastructure. If this, like, let's say, if this bridge would get hit in the future by, I don't know, a cruise missile, whatever, a drone, this is like a key point. And as I said, the bridge is finished today. Okay, maybe let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is another intersection we can see, Novosarivka. This is quite close to the eastern end of this railway. And there, I'm not sure, do we have, I also had a video, I think, where you could see active track laying, like a Russian train, a track laying train, at this intersection. This is basically one of the first parts of the railway which was actually finished, because we had a video on social media or on Telegram which showed that the track was laid there. Very important also, if you want to monitor something, satellite imagery is very good, but you also want to connect it sometimes with actual footage, with videos, with images from the ground, because it also gave me one important point. This connection is not double tracked. It's like the current focus from the Russians is to have a single track connection finished. And I assume they will try, or it looks like they will try to expand it into a double track connection in the future. But first they want to have it operational as single track. Yeah. And then I think we have, yeah, perfect. There we see it. Yeah, exactly. So there you can see you have basically. Let's look at another time at it. Yeah, you clearly see it's single tracked. You also can see this is not like, this is a special track laying train from the enterprise that buys the enterprise that has the contract to build this railway. And yeah, this is the perfect lineup you want to have with the satellite imagery. Then you have confirmed that track is being laid. Okay, and I think then we have one last image. Yeah, this is the junction where it actually this new railway track will be connected to older railway track. This is quite close to in the south of Donetsk, and there you can also see a lot of construction effort. Actually, there is the question. I'm not totally sure if this will be electrified in the future. It looks a bit like, I'm not sure. Basically, you see a lot of raw materials, what you need for the construction of a railway, with a lot of steel and concrete and all this kind of material you need to build actually a railway.
Real quick, Jay, to clarify, when you say electrified, just to clarify for the audience and myself, I assume it means like you can run electric rail cars on it, which kind of opens up more options for you in terms of which cars you can run on a rail line, or which engines, I should say.
Yes, this could be overhead lines, but actually, I'm not 100% sure. To be fair, you have to also be careful when you're you should not try to. You should try to confirm that you have what you have seen, but not over exaggerate what it could be, so you end up in speculation. You just want to confirm something. Yes, this could be electrified, but in general, electrified line with overhead lines also means a disadvantage in war times, because basically, let's assume the Ukrainians would like to hit the overhead lines with a drone. Like, this railway is not that far away from the front line. It's about 50-60 kilometers. Then you also would create basically vulnerability. You would have to need, it costs more, you need more service, and it's also more vulnerable to attacks, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So we have like two questions from chat. I think we can maybe consolidate into like one question, sort of. Like, does Ukraine have the ability to kind of disrupt rail lines in general and the construction of rail lines in particular? Have we seen like strikes on this stuff? Have we seen partisan activity? Like, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I'm also not I'm not finished yet. But to this question, yes, like a lot of when we talk actually about the occupied oblasts, the Kherson and the Zaporizhia oblast, there was a lot of partisan resistant activity. I mean, it's easy to like the railway can't move; it's fixed. And I think in general in warfare, it's very common that railway tracks can be an active target. There was a lot of actually strikes on Russian railway capacities throughout the conflict since the invasion of the Russians started.
All right, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, what we don't have is like I made an analysis yesterday. How far has the progress gone? Because as soon as you have like let's say decent or not totally clouded satellite, like free available satellite imagery from EO browser, you can check the progress. And I clearly have to assess like the railway is not operable yet, and I think it will take at least weeks. I'm not sure if it will be months, but at least weeks until it will be operable and we can see it. And we will also be able to see when trains are actually like using the new railway. There are methodics. Besides videos, you can use satellite aperture radar, for example. And I also monitored this, and the only thing so far could be found was some Japanese very interested geolocating guy who found where the Russians store the the railway laying track actually. Yeah. And from my point of view, I personally would have thought they would have finished the construction earlier. What we know about the capabilities of like Russian companies, but also the Russians have incorporated like railway military logistic battalions, which can like they are basically good at repairing railway tracks or also as laying. And I talked to some experts, and like their in general their capability to lay tracks is decent. But as we can see here, yeah, this is from yesterday. As I said, you can see some clouds. I had to zoom and work with pixels, but actually between those two big clouds in the middle, there you could see there's no track. And as you can see, very clear in the southwestern part, there you can see that the track is laid. You see it's a bit grayish, and then it went into more brownish. And the brownish part is where there is no track yet. Yeah, it's like hard to see. You have to have a yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you can also see they're still building there. They're not even close to lay any track. They're still, I don't know. But yeah, as you can see, it's a bit pixeled, and you need a very like well-schooled eye to see that. But you can see the difference between laid track and the ground without track.
Jay, I've got a question for you, if that's okay.
Yep.
The current president of the Russian Federation referenced in a speech last week about a railway, and people are wondering. In fact, I've just seen there's a comment similar to this in the chat from Hermegido. This railway line, if the Kerch Bridge should go down, is this within Gimler's HIMARS range? In fact, this is kind of a general question to anyone on the panel. What are the vulnerabilities of this railway as a main supply route?
Yeah, you can, like, it's not that far away. I said that it's about 50, 60 kilometers. You can measure it from the front line. So yes, it's definitely within target range of these systems. And the only thing I would add, if you like, just the Ukrainians also strike, like they made a lot of strikes on railway capacity in summer 2023 with the scalps and the storm shadows. I remember Henishensk, for example. And what is important is that you like basically hit the bridge. When you like hit the track, it's easy to fix. Maybe the railway line will not be operable for a couple of days or a week, but when you really want to damage the infrastructure, hit the bridges or substations, yeah, this kind, or actually a train. When it's not moving, you could hit it. And yeah, this is like the vulnerability of the railway system.
All right, thanks. You answered my question. We can go on or finish there, whatever's good for you, Jay.
Oh, I think I'm quite through it. Like the interesting part, which remains, is when will it be like operable? And I don't know. I can't give you an exact date, of course, but as I said, it will take weeks at least, I guess. And I will probably the first one who like will check it when there's a train driving. Actually, like yeah, we will monitor it very closely. Currently, not. No trains there. I guess that's it.
Yeah, so I think maybe a good summation is like this. We're not quite sure why it's taken Russia this long to achieve this. It's like not a particularly like difficult task considering the amount of time they put into it, but you expect it to be done within like several weeks, you think, and we'll keep everyone posted. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just for some background, there's a bunch of Telegram channels in Zaporizhia who have been watching this get built over time, and they were remarking, like, for weeks now, that the Russian laborers who are building it they haven't been working hard, and they see that, like, they drive past and they always seem to be doing nothing, which, to be fair, everyone always says about every construction project ever. But it's just something, and it was just notable that the people on the ground who were keeping tabs on what was going on were noting from day one that this was obviously going to be delayed by weeks, if not months, because they were working so slowly.
Yeah, okay. And oh, I missed something actually. Sorry. I'm a bit tired because I had a very long night checking this railway actually. There's also another project. The Russians are planning to build a railway basically on the coastline of the Azov Sea. They want to connect Berdyansk, Melitopol, I think also with Crimea. And it was announced officially and they talked about it. Even I also like some media reported about it, and I have not yet found any evidence of active construction of this projected coastline, just to add up a bit of information.
Well, thanks, Jay, for keeping tabs on all this stuff. I know you guys, it's a lot of work, and it's I don't know, very specialized work. I certainly couldn't do it. My goal is one day to have like you, Gick, Brian, and Andrew all at the same time to do like a GeoInt stream. I don't know. Would you think that'd be cool, Erlend?
Yeah, if Danielle is available too.
Oh, Danielle, of course, too. Yeah, it's like our GeoInt team's getting big. It's hard to keep like remember everyone. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much, Jay. So next topic we have up for us is Biennale. Biennale is going to talk about the Ukraine facility plan that's currently being implemented in Ukraine. So over to you, Biennale.
Yes, thank you, Joseph. All right. So this week on Monday, the 18th of March, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine approved the Ukraine Facility Plan, which will become the basis for the implementation of the European Union's financial support program for Ukraine in 2024 to 2027. The EU financial support program for Ukraine provides 50 billion euros financial assistance to Ukraine, which will be paid out in charges in 2024 until 2027. The financial assistance cannot be used for the military and follows a special set of rules. Ukraine had multiple legal reforms and implemented different programs and policies in the areas of anti-corruption and transparency in the past. We at Tochnyi reported about it. This website of the Ukrainian government provides an overview about the planned reforms and policies, as well as a transparent overview about the allocation and spending of the funds. The underlying idea is to have 69 reforms in 3 main blocks. The basic reforms that lay the foundation for acceleration of the economic recovery and the strengthening institutional capacity, economic reforms, and key sectors, which will have also smaller reforms. I have a website here, you can see it basically. The domain is ukrainefacility.me.gov.ua. Ukraine made this fantastic website. Here we get an overview about the funds, right? 38 billion direct support to the state budget. We can click here and then we see the financial assistance will be provided in form of concessional loans, 33 billion, and grants, 5.2 billion. Support in the form of grants and loans will be provided on a quarterly basis for the fulfillment of the indicators of the Ukraine Facility Plan. 20% of the grant funds under the first pillar of the program, which are around 1 billion, should be allocated to the needs of the regions, and the funding cannot be used to cover military expenditures, like I mentioned. Then we have almost 7 billion an investment fund. This will be a special investment instrument to stimulate investment in priority sectors. The funding will be available to investors through the European Bank for Recovery and for rebuilding and forgot the name, and the European Institute for Rebuilding. I think, I'm not sure. And other international institutions. Support is available for Ukraine private and state-owned companies. That's basically what the investment fund is for. And then we have almost 5 billion technical and administrative support, which means technical assistance to the government for harmonization of legislation with the European Union, and especially structural reforms. Capacity building of authorities at the national, regional, and local levels, and the coverage of interest and on concessional loans under the program. And then we are coming to the plan, which are the different reforms. We have underlying enablers, which are public administration reforms. Public financial management will be reformed. The judicial system will be reformed. And the fight against corruption and money laundering is one of the key enablers for this whole recovery plan for Ukraine. Then there will be economic reforms, like I mentioned, for the financial markets, management of public assets, human capital, business environment, and decentralization and regional policies. If you're interested, decentralization and regional policies, we had a nice talk with Sören on our podcast. This is still existent. You can listen in when we talk about this topic. Which are the key sectors, right? The energy sector, transport and logistics, agri-food sector, critical raw materials, entrepreneurship, SME development and processing industries, information technologies, green transition and environmental protection. if you want to know more and want to read more about the reforms, you can click here. There's more about it explained. And it's quite a nice website, provides much information. Here's a timeline, how this money will be given to Ukraine. And what the indicators are basically for giving this money. So it's quite an interesting website, and Ukraine basically shows you in a really nice manner transparency and informs us about what is happening. Yep. Any questions?
I've got a question, Bernardo. How long did it take Ukraine to get this funding, and what kind of support package is this? Is this on an annual basis, or has that not been determined yet? Thanks.
On this website somewhere is explained that which systems or which reforms we get how much money allocated. I think it's also some things are mentioned here. The money is coming from the European Union. This is a famous support package, the financial support package from the European Union, which they announced to support Ukraine from 2024 to 2027 with 50 billion euros, right?
This is significant, isn't it? Because this shows that level of trust that the EU has in Ukraine to give it this money for the important task of rebuilding it and the other things which are itemized on the website. But it also shows that Ukraine has met a series of criteria which the EU demands before giving this funding, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, you see all these reforms and what I mentioned before, everything about anti-corruption and transparency, which is also mentioned here, right? Fight against corruption, money laundering, and all these reforms, public administration, judicial systems. These are basic reforms which will also help Ukraine to be able to work together with the European Union, right? Ukraine implemented already many systems for this to be more transparent, to be more accountable, and this is absolutely a step in the right direction and a big step in the right direction. Also, it's good to see that Ukraine is this prepared for this. Took a while until we were able to get Hungary to stop vetoing this package, right? If we remember, this was a big topic end of last year. And Ukraine was ready. Ukraine had the reforms ready. Ukraine has done its homework and presented basically this website, this informations, and was able to get all the ministers to agree and sign this reform.
That's pretty big news. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? Nope. Great. Back to you, Joseph. Who's up next?
Yeah, thanks, Bernardo. So I think we usually would have kind of our Q&A right now, but I think we've been fairly on top of questions from chat. Erlend, do you see any questions from chat that we missed over the?
No, but I think you're forgetting the legend. Germinate.
Oh my goodness gracious! You're absolutely. I have a big problem with this. I do it frequently.
That's
Mr.
the third
Germinate.
week in a row.
Oh my god! Yeah, I'm terrible. Okay, I'm so sorry. You have a segment for us. I remember you telling me it's fairly brief this week. I'm going to turn it over to you immediately for your segment, sir. My hats off to you. I apologize.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's a very short one. Just two different pieces of information this week. One very important just going through it. We're starting with Tuesday and an announcement by Germany's Minister of Defense, Boris Pistorius. During the latest Rammstein meeting, he announced a new military aid package for Ukraine, which is supposed to have a value of around 500 million euros. In reality, it's way more than that. The package focus on artillery ammunition, including 10,000 155 shells from Bundeswehr stocks, so Germany's own army, 180,000 155 shells via the SEC initiative, and 100,000 155 shells newly ordered in Germany via the industry. 100 protected infantry vehicles, 100 logistic vehicles, spare parts for weapon systems already delivered, and medical material also part of the package. So yeah, in reality, this is way more than 500 million euros. Yeah, but very great to hear. And already at the end, a recent survey by the ZDF shows that the German population is still strongly supporting Ukraine. 59% favor increased arms and ammunition deliveries from European countries, and 48% are in favor of liberating occupied territories, even if giving them up could end the war. So just to give you the German public right here. Yeah, and that's basically all I have this week. It's very, very brief. Of course, the German package, very nice to hear. I just want to remind you that in February, so last month, only Germany has provided Ukraine with a package of over 1.1 billion euros. A couple of days later, we have provided a new package of 100 million euros. And now just 1 month later, it's another 500 million euros from Germany. I know we get a lot of hate because of Taurus, but I just want to emphasize, besides Taurus, we're doing so much, and you hate to hear it, but more than anybody else. And I just want to point that out again and again. Yeah, and that's everything I have this week. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Maurice. Again, apologies. I remember at some point I used to give you a very elaborate introduction. I agree it was kind of over elaborate, and you came to me and you were like, I don't think it needs to be that elaborate. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And I started simplifying it. I think I've simplified it to the point where it just doesn't exist anymore. So I need to correct that. But I wanted to ask you, I remember I did in my news report today, a little thing on the press conference about I believe it's KNDS, or you'll tell me the acronym, but it's the joint venture between German and French companies. And I don't know, you just kind of told me an interesting little story about that, because I just kind of read the flat news report as is, but you tend to have more of an understanding of what's going on. So you watched the press conference, and like the way you kind of characterize it to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, was that the Germans and the French have this, joint venture, but the French and the Germans came in, and like all the stuff I said in the report was kind of stated about how they're going to collaborate on producing parts, and it's all going to be in Ukraine, and it's a good idea, and that's all true. But then like the French kind of left, like the delegation from the French kind of left early. And then the Germans kind of stayed, and they answered more questions, and they were like, we really haven't agreed to anything like more specific than that. Or we're in the very early stages. We just sort of agreed to do it. We haven't like decided on anything or set aside money or stuff like that. I mean, is that an accurate portrayal? Go ahead.
Yeah, so first, everything you said in the beginning was absolutely true. So there was no misinformation. Just want to point that out. Yes, so there's a reason why I haven't talked about it on Twitter, haven't tweeted about it, and didn't include it in my report, because it's like you just said, it's in very, very early stages. During the press conference, like after Pistorius, so our Minister of Defense, said something, and then the French Minister of Defense said something. The French side was there for like one question, and then everyone left from the French because they don't have enough time anymore. Why? Don't ask me. And then our Minister of Defense was asked a couple of more questions about this, and he emphasized, like during every question, hey, it's just the beginning. It's very early to say what will happen, when will it happen, like what are the costs, blah blah blah. All these kind of questions. they have plans to do this. They have plans to do this, but it's too early to say when it will happen and when everything will start. And things could change. It's in a very, very early stage. Everything, or the only thing I just want to point out is that, as far as I understood it, not KNDS, which is Nexstar and KMW in Germany, not they have said themselves they want to do it. As far as I understood it, it was an agreement between Macron and Scholz, no, I believe this was Scholz and Macron. Yeah, they have said that they want to bring more German and French defense companies to Ukraine. So they went to KNDS and said, "Do this." Of course, that doesn't work without the consent of KNDS, but the governments of France and Germany are strongly supporting this facility, I would say, in Ukraine.
Yeah, so I think maybe I mischaracterized it a bit. It's hard to resist just the idea that the French come in and say all this grand stuff, and then the Germans kind of stick around and say, "Listen, there's not like a real plan. We haven't seen like a real logistical plan in place yet." But it sounds like it maybe more was just coincidental that the French had to leave, and then the Germans stayed to answer more questions. So that's probably more accurate, but it's just kind of, I don't know, the way I heard it was kind of funny to me, but. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. I think it's obviously a good move, but yeah, it's probably going to, I don't know, it's going to take, I'm guessing months is probably a good timeline to measure if we're talking about very early progress on this. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
At least months. Anyway, yeah, cool. So
yeah, sorry. I was focusing a bit on the chat because I read something. Month, I would say even more. Like when you think about Rheinmetall, for example, yeah, they want to start a 155 production in Ukraine. They have signed the memorandum of understanding in February, and they are still searching for a place where they could open the factory, right? So they haven't even started in bringing the machinery to Ukraine and start production, stuff like this. And even this, with signed memorandum of understanding, etc., PPS at least take or is expected to take until Q4 this year, right? So I think the new facility from KNDS will not open until 2025. In my opinion, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, it's of course very, very good, but yeah, might take a while.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, appreciate that. Anything else you want to add before we conclude?
Yeah, I just want to say something because SK said, as a German, I don't like Dedua constant celebrating of German aid sums. We give the most, etc. pp. Just mention what we provide. We are not the greatest, nor the special in the world. First, I absolutely agree. We are not the greatest. Not the greatest, nor the specials in the world. And as far as I can see it, I've never said that. It's not that I'm not a propaganda account. Yeah, I'm not always saying, "Oh, this is great, this is great, this is great." And I don't want to be rude, but if you would know my stuff or know what I'm posting, for example, on Twitter, etc., pp., you would know that I'm constantly criticizing our government for not doing enough, because it is absolutely true that we could do more and we have to do more. I mean, for example, it can't be reality that after over 2 years, we still haven't figured out how to provide Ukraine with modern main battle tanks, for example. Yeah, we're providing Leopard 1s, yes, great, but there's an end to it, right? We only have this and this amount of modern main battle tank of Leopard 1s, and in like 1 or 2 years, and the war won't end in 1 or 2 years. We are standing there without tanks to provide to Ukraine, because tanks to produce them, it's not like you produce one tank and it only takes you a month, right? It takes you at least 2 years. So we need to have contracts last year to provide Ukraine in next year with modern tanks, right? And just one example. Taurus, of course, also an example. For me, the excuse to not send Taurus to Ukraine is absolutely BS, in my opinion. Of course, the chancellor has a great responsibility. I mean, has to take care for 84, 85 million people, right? And it's not very easy to do that. I wouldn't change with him. But still, in my opinion, he lacks the understanding of what will happen to Germany or Europe in general if Ukraine would lose this war, and therefore we should support Ukraine with everything we have or we could spare. But it is absolutely true, and you have to not agree on that, but you have to also evaluate this, that Germany is currently doing the most for Ukraine. Like, take Great Britain, for example. Yeah, Great Britain, as one of the biggest military powers in the world and strongest economies in Europe, not in the EU, but in Europe, has provided Ukraine with a new military aid package. 60 million British pounds or 80 million British pounds. It's like, just one example. Like France, what has France provided Ukraine with in the recent weeks or months? What about other countries? Spain has now pledged, when I'm correct, like 20 Leopard 2 tanks, which is very great. Like I said, they need modern tanks, and this will compensate for the losses. But when you look at other partners, what they are doing, and when you then look at Germany, what we are doing, you have to you basically have to agree that we are doing the most. And this is not about like saying we are the greatest or we are special in the world, but in my opinion, we always keep forgetting what Germany is doing. Everyone is just focusing on Taurus. Everyone is just complaining that Scholz is so scared of sending the cruise missiles to Ukraine, and I absolutely agree. But everyone is just forgetting about what we are already doing. We have provided Ukraine with military aid since the start of this year, with at least 2 billion euros. Pledged, of course, included. But take a look at what others are doing. The US, 300 million. And I could go on and on and on. Sorry for the rant. I just want to make that.
Quick shout out to the Netherlands and Denmark, I think. Let's maybe try to end on a positive note. Are there other countries you think that in Europe that are doing a good job?
You just mentioned two, right? The Netherlands and Denmark, for example, are doing really great. Of course, the Nordic countries are very silent about their aid. I believe that they're doing more than they're publicly announcing. I mean, the major difference is that Germany is very public, right? We are announcing everything we are sending, or mostly, more or less everything we are sending. But oh Jesus, I come in. How do you say it in English? In Hell's Kitchen, if I forget a certain country now. But I think Denmark and the Netherlands should be,
Yeah, and not to say those countries aren't great and they aren't doing a lot, but they're just not as big as Germany or like the US or to some extent like the UK and places like that. It's just Ukraine needs a huge quantity of material support, and at least as an American, I can say that Germany has been the key bedrock of that since the US support has been lacking as a result of internal political issues. And I'll just say, like, privately in our conversations, I've often said something to that effect, and you've said, no, Germany's still not doing enough. Like, we need to do more. So I don't know. I think like it's somewhat fair to say like, or I don't know, like I think it's what everything you're saying is like accurate or justified. But I wouldn't characterize you as someone who really like defends Germans or uses this declaration that Germany's done the most as a defense that Germany doesn't need to do more, right? I think that's like something I would clarify is absolutely you want to see Germany do more. Maybe we can end on that. Like, what would you want to see Germany do more in just maybe in one thing or something that you would point out? Go ahead.
What I want, what we are doing more?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I have three things. where I see what Germany has to do. First is, of course, supply Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine because they need it. Of course, like, I really don't care if we are, for example, implementing geofencing to these cruise missiles, because Ukraine said they won't use it on Russian soil anyway. So who cares, right? Just deliver them to Ukraine. Second one would be large framework contracts for artillery ammunition, because the industry needs it to actually scale and scale and scale. And I just want to point out that the government is currently working with Rheinmetall on a framework contract for artillery ammunition for up to 2.2 million 155 shells. So that's already one where I would say in the next few days or weeks, this is off my list. And the third one I mentioned in the beginning as an example are the large orders for Leopard tanks. Yeah, I mean, I could understand if we are not ordering for Ukraine, but for our own army. But as far as I could see it, we have given 18 Leopard 2A6 tanks to Ukraine directly, 3 indirectly. And from these 18 we have given directly from our stocks, we have purchased 18 new ones, so an equivalent number. And that's not something where I would say, when we are buying, for example, 50 or 100 tanks, then I would say, okay, yeah, maybe no orders for Ukraine. But if it comes down, we could easily supply from our own stocks, right? But this is actually missing. And that's the third one where I would see we need either big orders for our own army for modern main battle tanks, or for Ukraine directly. But because as far as I can see it, they get Leopard 1s, they get 14 by Denmark and Netherlands. Again, shout out, these countries are doing great. Leopard 2A4s are these. And now they're getting, I believe Spain pledged 20 new Leopard 2A4s. Yeah, I think it's 2A4s. So yeah, these 3 things. So Taurus, large 155 orders or contracts, and large contracts for Leopard tanks.
Yeah, thanks, man. So I think I just had like 2 quick questions for Colby. Are you there, Colby?
Yes, sorry, I'm here.
Wonderful, no worries. So I just had 2 quick questions for you. Number one, if I understood correctly, I haven't been keeping up on the U.S. news too much. I figure once the actual aid goes through, like it'll be news everywhere, and I'll know. But my general understanding is there's like word on the street there's going to be another $300 million aid package that's going to get slipped through. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about was, I believe Canada made some interest. They declared some interest in joining maybe the drone program and also buying artillery shells for Ukraine or something to that effect. So I guess just broadly speaking, are there any updates from US and Canada you would want to discuss?
Sure. So on the first question, within the fiscal year 2024 Defense Appropriations Act, which was just passed by Congress over the weekend, or the House on Friday, and then the Senate very early in the morning on Saturday, and then signed by President Biden yesterday, there is $300 million for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative within the defense budget for the U.S. Department of Defense. So I already tweeted out the other day that I will probably write something short about that and how that money might be able to be best utilized by President Biden to support Ukraine sometime this week, early during the week, Monday or Tuesday, probably. So stay tuned for that. I'll have some comments on what that $300 million can do. On the question of Canada, yes, Canada is in fact going to join, or has joined, the Drone Capability Coalition. There's already been some past procurements of different unmanned aerial systems for Ukraine by the Canadian government, and now they are joining the Drone Capability Coalition. They announced a new procurement of some drones not too long ago, which I think were supposed to be made in Canada. I think it was a Canadian company that said we can make a bunch of drones for Ukraine. So it was like several hundred drones, if I recall correctly. So that is a thing. and as well, the government finally confirmed that they would be contributing some money to the Czech artillery procurement initiative. So they announced $40 million Canadian for the Czech initiative. So that's the latest on what's going on in Canada.
Yeah, thanks, Colby. So yeah, I guess that's the update. We'll definitely keep people posted if more substantial stuff comes out from North America. Yeah, so I think, Erlend, are there any other questions from chat or anything you wanted to cover before we go to Jonathan?
No, I don't think so. The panel is full of, very full. No one talked to Daniela this time. I don't know if Daniela has something he wants to say, maybe?
Oh, good evening. Good evening.
You didn't fall asleep?
No, I didn't. I was just looking at the delivery of Germany and other nation because I was quite taken by the comments. So I want to do like a wee of research just to make justice to our friends. But yes, well, regarding my latest work on FPV drone, I think there is a very good news about data because I just reposted a tweet of Andrew that probably Andrew can talk about. He made the public part of the database, so now everyone can go and look. I think is about the date. Yeah, go on, Andrew.
I'll just say this has always been public for a while. I just made a dedicated link to it because it's just a Google spreadsheet, and before every day I posted the losses, and I posted it along with the spreadsheet, and like 99% of people never looked at the spreadsheet and then asked me questions that were all answered in the spreadsheet, and it was annoying. But anyways, I've made a dedicated link to it on my website using some, just basic forwarding. And so now you can find it easier by just using a dedicated link instead of a long Google spreadsheet link, so.
No, it's very good because I mean, I was asked about these, and I always refer to contact you because I didn't remember how to go there. But with this link will be much easier, I think. And yeah, regarding the news, the latest tweet that essentially, well. At the moment, for what we have today, there's still a week to go, and Ukrainians have performed very well. I mean, in terms of strike on infantry vehicle and position, that they are ahead or at least in line with what they should have done to follow the trend that we expected. So they have reached 1 week before the same amount of strike on infantry, as you can see here. And I think they are just about to do the same for vehicle. And they are very well ahead in position as well. But as many other who commented my tweet say that this was expected somehow. We saw this happening. You can see the constant growth. What we didn't expect was that 659 from the Russians. So that these underperformance that we can't at the moment explain, and I would take with a grain of salt because of course there might be different reason for that. So we will see how it will evolve. But if these numbers stay steady to that, it's very likely that there is some kind of issue that we of course need to dig out, but it's potentially something good for Ukraine. But again, only in a month maybe we can draw a real conclusion. For what we can see, that there is a halt in all the figures, because essentially we had much less number of strikes reported. And if you can go forward, I also tried to explain a concept that I received always these type of comments from many users about, oh well, we had this information from this friend working and fighting in this area that the Russian has much more drone. Now, when you have about story like these, you have always to take these with some you have to analyze the data not only from a local perspective, because your data may be influenced by what is happening in that particular area. And I took as example what's happening around Bakhmut, because we were reported from Jonathan, then one of his friends told him that there was a kind of this situation in the last month as well. So I don't know if you go in the number 6 or 7. There is a map with you go down. Yep, that one. So in this slide, essentially, you can see that this is Ukraine as it is in terms of heat map for general strike from Russia in March, and you can see that there is a very focused area. If you essentially go and zoom more around Bakhmut and Chasiv Yar, and this area essentially has been interested by most of the strike. There are essentially 3 areas, but the most affected is this one, and this explains exactly why people working and operating in that area feel that superiority, because most of the strike that instead Ukraine is doing, and if you go in the next thread, you will see, is in the area of Adivka. is a Mayhem, there are also other hotspots, but this is where massively is concentrated in March. These are all the strikes from the 1st of March to today. There are also some, you can see some circle, this is some shelling, and the red one are from Russia, but the shelling is more for myself to have some, I'm working on this, but we know that the data from shelling, and Andrew can confirm this, is not amazing, at least the data that I'm using at the moment. But for FPV, they are very good. And as you can see, there is a very strong concentration along tree lines, along roads. So, and this show you that there is, in this area, the Russian will feel that the Ukrainian are overwhelming using drones. But of course, this is because it's a very localized, very focused area. So when you look at this type of information from the front line, you have always to average them for the entire front line, because it's so long that having information only from one point doesn't make essentially everything happening at the same time in the same way. And I try to do this because I received this comment many times, and I feel this is a very important factor. We should not underestimate information from soldier and from friends and for volunteers that are with boots on the ground. But at the same time, we have to try to take this information from many places as possible in order to have a rough idea of what's happening along the entire line. Because otherwise, you will be really biased, because you are picking essential information from just one zone. And and that's it. My personal take is that if these results are good, that there are different I mean, not these results are good, but if these are consistent, this is possibly related to a series of path factor, and one was probably related to something that Dima from Wild Hornets told us 1 week ago regarding how the procurement of drone in Russia is much more complex and convoluted and slow to adapt also to changes in terms of technology than the Ukrainian one, and especially the Ukrainian volunteer groups, which have less ties because they are volunteering, but at the same time they have less financial resources. So maybe this is also affecting somehow these. There are also people stating that looks like that Ukrainian has fielded more EW. I mean, this is a rumor, that it must be evidence of that. So at the moment we don't have that, so we can't claim that this is true. It could be, but we don't know exactly. So it's very important now to start to look also logistic and how these drone flight. For example, one thing that I was thinking this afternoon was some parts maybe are not available or as available as it should be. Cameras, antennas, but especially batteries. And this is an area where Ukrainians are doing well because they are buying the cell and assembling the entire batteries by themselves. And these could be maybe a reason. So these batteries are now lacking from China. So if you are buying these directly, you may have longer lead time. That this means that you will have the drone, but with a delay, and this could explain why we are seeing these. So maybe this is something similar to the negative peak that we saw in December. You, Erlend, probably remember about that, where there was this very strange and very worrisome trend of Ukrainians having much less drone, or at least less strike as the Russian. And you see these in one of in the difference between the factions. And this one is about the positions which stay. Yes, this one. As you can see, when we started, it started growing, but then in December we had this negative peak, let's say. But then it start again to grow, and we have been confirmed by several manufacturers that peak was a logistical issue. And also Wild Hornet confirmed this a few weeks ago. So maybe the Russians are having the same issue, and in a month they will start to go up again with a gap again, but not as dramatic as we see today.
One thing to say is that there's been a substantial uptick in drone dropped bombs of all kinds. It's really been taking over how many drones we see per day. I mean, there have been days where the drone drop bombs are like 2 or 3 times more than the FPV drones, and and a lot of them are Russian, a lot of them are Ukrainian too, and Ukraine's been using a lot more of the Baba Yagas. They've been, and Russia's been using more heavy bombers as well, but their heavy bombers are a lot different than Ukrainian heavy bombers, because the Ukrainian heavy bombers are much bigger than the Russian heavy bombers. But the Russian heavy bombers have pretty good warheads that are good at penetrating armor, whereas the Ukrainian ones more rely on high explosives. So the Russian ones, although they don't drop bombs that are as large, but they're still pretty effective at destroying vehicles. Ukraine's been using a lot of just dropping just gigantic bombs, just huge bombs. And if you watch the videos of these drone attacks, it's not one drone attacking. It's a giant swarm of drones. You see them all darting around. It's just like 20, 30 drones all flying over with bombs and dropping them all on basically the same target. So you'll have like one drone that might have 2 or 3 gas grenades, and they'll fly up and drop a gas grenade into a bunker, and then it'll have 3 or 4 other drones hovering, waiting for people to run out of the bunker and then drop grenades and bombs on them. And then once people stop running out, they'll go to the next bunker and drop a gas grenade in there and keep going. These sorts of things are happening pretty frequently, where you have maybe one drone that has a very large, heat rounds that it'll drop it on top of a vehicle, and then 5 or 6 other drones hovering there for when the people evacuate the vehicle to drop grenades on them. They're attacking in swarms and dropping a lot of bombs. So this is a new tactic that has come up over the past few, like 2 weeks. It seems to be taking over from the FPV drones. The FPV drones are being used more of a support role, where these bombing like swarms will attack a position, and if they like retreat into a position where the bombs can't hit them, you'll fly an FPV drone into there to drive them back out and start bombing them again. The FPV drones seem to be much more of a like a helper, not so much of the main attack force. And yeah, and this video here is Baba Yaga dropping a mine on a T-72 B3M mod 2022. So it hit it right on and exploded. The Baba Yaga may not have survived. The tank just completely detonated. There in that video, there was another tank that also detonated, and I think killed the Baba Yaga as well. So I think they lost 2 Baba Yagas in that attack, but they destroyed I think 8 T-72 B3Ms, and I think maybe it was 7, and then a T-80 BV. I think it was 8 tanks total that they destroyed in that video.
And if I understand correctly, Andrew, getting that mine on the drone was like kind of a technical achievement, right? It took them a little while to get a drone that could like carry it and detonate the mine at the right time, because they have so many of these mines. And so now that they can actually just drop them on tanks like this, it's kind of a big deal, eh?
Yeah, it was done at desperation. I think it was like the 54th Brigade or whatever. It was like Constantine's friends, basically. They like started doing this and it worked out pretty well. And other people started copying them.
Is the boys up in Kharkiv, right?
No, it's near Siversk, near yeah, it's just the Siversk area, basically near like near the Lysychansk oil refinery, like in that general area. Yeah, they started using these bombs like last year, like in the summer or whatever, or maybe even earlier, maybe the spring, and it worked pretty well. When they first started, they were trying to they were experimenting with how to drop it, because these mines are not meant to be dropped. they're like shaped like a dinner plate. When you drop it, they float around. They don't fall straight down. So you had to figure out a way to make them go straight down. And even still, they don't really do that. Yesterday, I posted a video of them dropping a mine on a BMP. I don't know if you want to look at that one, but they dropped a mine on a BMP, and you could see that it floated away from the BMP. And that's a sad robot. Yeah, keep going. It's a loaf. That's Ramanov. There it is. Go up. Yeah, them Skylords. They dropped. This is another Baba Yaga, and that's a BMP 1 right there, and they're dropping a TM62 mine, and they missed the BMP, but as it turns out, they didn't really need to hit it because the BMP blows up anyway. You can see the damage after the end of the video. I'll show the BMP. But yeah, the Baba Yagas are getting more and more popular because they're really good. They're kind of like artillery and Ukraine does use them in groups. I've seen videos where they've had like 8 Baba Yagas all loaded with ammo. Like each one has like 6 or 8 rounds, and there's one video in particular up near Tochnyi where the Russians attacked. They sent like a platoon of infantry up, and there was like 8 Baba Yagas just kind of waiting for them. And when the infantry got under the Baba Yagas, they all just dropped all their bombs all at once and wiped out the entire platoon in about like 2.5 seconds. Like every single one was gone. So like you could just ambush with these things and just wipe out platoons and companies of infantry. You could also use them as basically artillery, where you fly up, a few Baba Yagas, like 6 of them or whatever. You fly them up to a tree line and just dump all the ammo all at once, and it's pretty indistinguishable from getting hit by like a whole bunch of artillery guns all at the same time. Like when you show the videos to people, they will think it's artillery. It's really hard to tell the difference. So but yeah, this was a that there is a I think an anti-tank mine, or an anti-tank bomb, I think, and they use it to blow up these bunkers. But man, that video gave me a headache because there were 44 drone drops in like a 30-second video. It was too much.
Yeah, it's hypnotic.
Yeah. The whole video was like that. Yeah, but
shook my head like like you do when you.
Yeah, and this is a T80 BVM, which has a terrible sunscreen on it, and that they put the armor guarding all of the places where the bomb can't hurt the tank, but they didn't put the armor where the bomb can hurt the tank, and that was a mistake because then they dropped the bomb into the hole and it blew up. I don't understand that design. It's a terrible design. I don't know why they did that. But yeah, the drone drop bombs, they've been used to take out vehicles like this for basically the entire war. And it's not super interesting to see them take out these vehicles because it's abandoned. Obviously, it's been hit before. It's probably been hit by FPV drones. They probably threw a few at it. None of them did anything, and then they called in a little Mavic drone to drop a hand grenade in it. But they've been doing that forever. What's new are these swarming attacks where they are sending like 4, 8, 12 drones up. Each one is holding between 1 and 4 bombs, and wiping out an entire trench line of infantry over the course of a few minutes. And there's like nothing the infantry can do about it. There's no response, because if you try to hide, they hit you with an FPV drone. And also there's dive bomber drones that instead of dropping the bomb straight down, they fly at the thing and drop it so it flies at it at very high velocity, and you can use that to launch bombs through windows and doors, and you can throw it into a bunker that you obviously you can't drop a bomb into a bunker, but you can fling it through the door. There are so many ways the drones can hurt you that once there's a sufficient number of them, you can't shoot them down, because if you try shooting at one, you'll just have another one hit you. And there's no response, really. Like electronic warfare might be your only hope, but if you're in a situation where you're getting hit like this, then you're toast. I've seen them wipe out entire trenches, like just systematically destroying everybody in the trench. And then once they're all gone, you can just march your infantry into the trench on a post, and I've seen that happen too. So drone warfare is constantly evolving. There's not only one type of drone. All these types of drones all have their own roles in the way the war is fought. And as time goes on, they're getting more specialized, and they're getting better.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for the terrifying update on the evolution of drone technology in this war. It's I think it's pretty scary stuff, and I really hope that Ukraine gets as much support as possible from this drone coalition and just directly bilaterally from nations, so that they can stay competitive in this, because it's something that's very very, very important, and pretty serious. I don't know, this is, I think, one of the most important races that's going to define this war is the production of drones and the ability to innovate the drones. So would you agree?
Yep, the innovation is never ending. there's so many different ways they can get you. There's so many munitions. There's been big developments in the lethality of the munitions they drop. There are a lot more incendiary drones now, like drones that just specialize in incendiary devices to burn down buildings or to fling into bunkers and burn the bunker from within. In addition to maybe tear gas grenades, etc. So there's constant innovation. It's just constant.
I just wanted to point out that Andrew also has I wouldn't call it is it like a quote thread basically, where you have all these air-to-air combats between drones, and
yeah,
I think that's good. One of the better series of things you're doing on Twitter. It's very interesting to see, because that means that there's a real desperation about taking down these drones because they don't have measures to do it.
Yeah, you see them; they're going after Baba Yagas because it's like their biggest threat. Baba Yagas can only fly at night because they're so big. They're trivial to shoot down. Like there's like this like magic size where if an object is bigger than like a certain size, the human eye can just see it, and the Baba Yaga is above that size, so you can just see it. Like it's just like if it were a little bit smaller, you wouldn't be able to see it, but it's just the right size that you can, and obviously it has to be this size because it's a lifting giant bombs. so it has to fly at night, because if it flies in the day, it gets shot down, and at night it at least stands a chance. Even at night, it gets shot down all the time. Russia does not like them. They do tremendous damage. They're basically a flying artillery piece. That's kind of the way to think about it.
I just wanted to say that it is very, very worrying for me that Western militaries are not watching this development more closely than they are, and that they don't have people actually in Ukraine taking notes and learning how this capability is developing. It is also incredibly worrying that we don't have production facilities that can build these drones in Europe and on a big scale, because it would, of course, help Ukraine if we could build them for Ukraine, but we will also learn more about the drone industry, and we would be able to train more people on using drones and learning, because we are so far behind. And if any big war is to break out where we will be involved, then drone warfare will be very, very important, and we are nowhere near we're not even catching up to what they're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. We'll do our best to keep everyone updated on what's going on with drone warfare. We, of course, do have at least one colleague in the U.S. military, I think, who's doing his darndest to explain what's going on over there to his colleagues. So hopefully some of it gets through. Hopefully other Western militaries are taking these lessons into account, because they are valuable, hard-fought lessons by the Ukrainians. They're learning these lessons the hard way, and we should give them our support because, I think as Erlend said, this is not going away magically once this ends. So, thanks everyone for your contributions this week. So we're going to now turn it over to Jonathan for his segment, Ukraine's Greatest Generation. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, guys. Our individual for Ukraine's Greatest Generation this week is Vladimir Kirichuk. Vladimir was a defender for the football club Veres Rivne, and a defender in a second sense for his country within Ukraine's 46th Brigade. Many thanks to Ukrainian football's online stats archive, amongst other sources for this data. Vladimir was born on April the 5th, 1999, in the village of Ploska in Ukraine's Rivne region. Here's a picture of Vladimir here. And I thought I'd zoom in on the imagery here just to give everyone an idea of the rurality of this location. Looks pretty remote, doesn't it? There we go, that's really zoomed in. Vladimir had a long journey in his short life. He worked as a freight forwarder for Zalizia, then at a bread factory near the city of Rivne. During his time in higher education at university, he qualified in rehabilitation as well as physical education. Sporting activities were a massive part of Vladimir's life from an early age. At 15, Vladimir gained a place at a sports school affiliated with the famous Veresh football club that you can see before you here. Looks like a field of dreams, doesn't it? An interesting fact about this club, actually, Veresh FC had actually lost its professional status in 2011 due to financial difficulties. However, new life was breathed into this club in 2015, literally the year which Vladimir started playing there. And Vladimir had just turned 15 when he started playing there. Thanks to the efforts of his coach and other professionals, he dedicated 2 seasons to playing here at Veresh. A tall lad, here he is here, he's a tall lad. Vladimir was a defender, and during his football career, he played for different professional and amateur clubs. This guy played football for his oblast. Football, or soccer, for my American friends, is the most popular sport in Ukraine. Like with regional football, as with pretty much all regional level sports anywhere, it is highly competitive, with many players vying for a place in each team. Vladimir's first coach at the Veresh Youth Sports Academy, a guy called Mykola Volkov, had this to say about Vladimir. He said, Vladimir Kirachuk came to the Veresh Junior High School at the age of 15 in 2014. He played for 2 seasons under my leadership. He played for the school's all 1999-born team in both the regional championship and the Ukrainian Football League championship for his age group. He said Vladimir never missed a training session because he loved football. He was a wonderful guy, a very sincere person, good-natured, positive, and hardworking. Playing as a defender, Vladimir valued teamwork very highly and distinguished himself by his competitive character. This is where Veresh, I was looking, the under-19 team, there's, unlike the men's team, there's not a lot of stats out there. But during his time at Veresh, Vladimir in Veresh managed to get through to the last 16 in the competitive cup round. So I'll just try and maximize this so people can see this. I mean, getting through to the next round must have been, I imagine, a story he must have told more than once. As you can see, Rivne, Veresh here, they stuck it to Ternopil Oblast in the first round of 32, beating them 1-0. And they won their first game in that first round of 16 against Lviv and lost the other 2. But this guy was, he was going places. Following the full-scale invasion in 2022, Vladimir was called up and he was mobilized into Ukraine's 46th Air Mobile Brigade, which interestingly was reformed as a brigade in 2022 during the year Vladimir joined, just like as was the case with his football club Veresh FC, which was reformed when he joined. During his mill training, he didn't want to concern his family about his safety. He assured them of his imminent return. However, on October the 1st, 2022, during the evacuation of himself and fellow soldiers from the front line in Kherson, Vladimir became one of the thousands of Ukrainian casualties lost in the Kherson liberation offensive. initially listed as missing. Subsequent DNA analysis confirmed the death of 23-year-old Vladimir. He is survived by his mother, his disabled father, and his sister Yulia. Yulia said this about his brother. She said, Vladimir loved his sport, devoting a lot of time to it. His eyes lit up when he played football. Vladimir could not sit still, so he traveled a lot and dreamed of where his next journey would take him. And that passion was one he clearly would have taken further in his life. There is currently an open petition on the President's petition website to posthumously award the status of Hero of Ukraine to Vladimir. That award is, of course, the highest national decoration that can be conferred upon an individual citizen by the President of Ukraine. But this is where his story, for us, ends now. Vladimir, defender of Ukraine, both on the field and in the field. And that's Ukraine's greatest generation for this week. We're going to finish with a picture of this week, which has been submitted to us by our great friend and contributor, Vasil. So it's this picture here. And this is incredible for a couple of reasons, because generations of people goes the Greek epic. Generations of people are like leaves. In winter, winds blow them down to earth. But then, when spring comes again, trees birth new life upon the wild. Yet not these people, not these Ukrainians, with no time to await a change in season or session in Congress. They live each day as if it were their last. They fight persistently. This fight transcends levels of society in its own distinctive form. These people are like us, yet they may seem not like us. No change in seasons can they afford. Not these Ukrainians, and not these Ukrainian children who have just spent the evening in a damp bomb shelter, feeling the terror in the skies above them. They have gone from little to no sleep to the steady concentration required for a chess tournament, in which Vasil and particularly his son is pictured playing here. Thank you, Vasil, for this picture. This is Tochny's picture of this week. Thank you to all our many listeners for your questions, your comments, for our 2,000 audience members. Thank you once again. We'll see you next week. Please stay tuned to Tochny for our latest work and research. That's it for now. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!
On behalf of